Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Really excited to have Jan Young with us today on our South Asian Success website or webinar. Jan is a friend to many, and I'm going to say that, Jan, because I think you truly are. You're not only just, a CS leader and, somebody that is a powerhouse in the space, but truly a friend to many. And I think you are just so always willing to help out, and we are, and welcome others and create space. And we love that. And thank you for making South Asian Success a place that, that you also are here visiting us at. So thanks for joining us today.
Oh, that's so sweet of you to say. I feel the same way about you. And I love having the opportunity to collaborate, as I know that we'll continue to collaborate too with CxChange community and South Asian Success. And just, yeah. And as soon as you asked me to come, I'm like, absolutely. Let's go for the date. So
I
excited,
know. I
excited
love
to
that.
do it.
And I like this topic because I think you're doing kind of also new things in your world, right? And you're doing a lot more sort of leadership development work. So this topic I felt like was really a nice one. And somebody earlier said like, is this for CS leaders? And it's like, no, it's not. It's for anyone that wants to be a leader, that wants that executive mindset. So we're going to talk to Jan about that. Before we do, I'm going to just dive into a couple of little slides here. Logistics. Keep your microphone muted if you don't mind, just unless you are actually talking or would like to actually ask a question. Feel free to do the hand raise. I'll do my best to monitor, but we'll actually have a lot of good, I think, conversation time as well in this session. We would love to hear from you, so use the chat too if you want. And we do record these for YouTube, so just keeping that in mind for everybody.
Awesome.
Okay, agenda, not really a big agenda here, but we're going to do a little intro, Jan, for those that may not fully know about her background. We'll talk with Jan. I'm going to do a little moderation of some questions that we had pulled together, but this can take a lot of different directions because it's such a rich topic. And so I want to leave a lot of time for everyone here to chime in and ask Jan what you would like to ask her. And then we'll just quickly talk at the end about what's coming up next. About South Asian Success, we're a collaborative community where we are focused on customer success and revenue professionals who identify as South Asian. We want to share culture, share our learnings, grow together. And we are still driving, diversity in thought and practice. And why we welcome like everyone to come to our webinars is because this is not just about being South Asian, but it's about how do we get better collectively. So that's really what we're focused on. Feel free to check out more information about us. And then our lovely guest, Jan. Jan, I'm going to actually ask you to do your intro, but I just want to, give everyone, a little snippet of Jan's career here. Jan is the founder of Jan Young CX, Step Up Exchange, CxChange, and it's formerly Success Hours and so many other, kind of iterations. But Jan has really developed a pretty amazing following in the CS space, and also community. So a place where people can kind of learn and also learn collaboratively, which I really love. Jan, would you share a little bit about your background, your experience, and kind of what we're going to be diving into today?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess you could probably characterize me as a nerd at heart. And I was sort of focused on continuous learning before it was a thing, probably. The CSM after my title actually stands for Scrum Master. And so I've tried just about everything in tech other than, well, I did try coding, it just didn't stick. So I'm really happy there's vibe coding now, because I'm much better with prompts. But I really like, and I think what has drawn me ultimately to customer success is I like being in the other shoes. I like understanding the other perspective. And so by having done a little bit of marketing, sales, professional services, product management, project management, dabbling in coding, although I never did that as for a day job. But then you take all of those experiences with you. And so the way that I approach customer success and customer experience, which is kind of my true love, is from that multidisciplinary approach. And that's also why I'm so passionate about CS leaders stepping up into executive leadership, because we're at this intersection of understanding the customer and our business. And when we bring that together, it's just not only powerful for our own careers, that's how we truly empower our team and our customers and really our company. Our businesses need that. They need that from us. So it's just what I'm completely super passionate about.
Well, awesome. And thank you for that intro. Let's dive in. So I'm going to take the slides away and just kind of make it a nice collaborative conversation time.
Yeah,
So
sure.
let's talk about that. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. So what are you seeing, or what are you hearing from the CS community? How many companies, should I say, and you might not have data, so this is just, speculation. Do you feel like CS teams and CS leaders are sitting at the executive table? Is it a 50-50? Is it more so than not? Because I have like definitely thoughts and opinions. I don't know the data on this, but I'm kind of curious. What have you heard?
Well, it's definitely decreased since since the C-suite has gotten smaller. And the C-suite has gotten smaller because our teams have gotten smaller. And that was really the shift in the economics. When we went from easy, cheap money to money costing something, and the investors started looking at profitability, whereas they absolutely were not looking at profitability before. They had a little lip service towards it, but they didn't really care. They just were all about growth. Even private equity, which is usually about, what are the fundamentals of your business? They went for growth. And it made sense because for 20 years we had cheap money, literally. And
Yeah.
so it is in the DNA of almost every company out there because of this. And it's how we all grew up in tech, was in this system where it was cheap money. And so this is a really, really big shift at the same time as Gen AI and now agentic AI and all of this other technology, emerging tech that makes us in really interesting ways way more productive. You know, it's changing everything, making our teams smaller. And so many companies, the way they dealt with that is they got rid of the CCO. They might have kept the VP or a director level, and then they put them under the CRO. And the challenge with that is the CROs often are truly only sales leaders, and they do not understand the customer life cycle. They don't usually even understand marketing, except for what have you done for me lately? And so that's a real challenge then, and a disservice to the companies, because they have fewer voices in those conversations when they still need more, especially in these complex times. You need to have that voice at the table. So that's, again, why I'm really committed to helping leaders come up and start to speak that executive language, so that then people start to understand what they're missing at that table. And then, investors don't like having too many chiefs, so you can always figure out how to set that up. Not going to have a chief innovation officer anymore either. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. They're like getting
Right.
rid of a lot of chiefs that companies, used to have. But that said, that doesn't mean that there isn't a way to have that seat at the executive table and to have that influence and that power. And it's really, I'm not usually into power. I'm much more about collaboration. But when your voice is heard, that is power. I think of it more in terms of empowerment and what it enables people and the company to do. But it's absolutely necessary.
Okay. So yeah, that's an excellent point. And I honestly, I didn't think of like things contracting the way that you described it. And it makes actually a lot of sense, right? I'm curious what you think then. Okay, so I know some companies where you can be the head of CS or the director of or VP of, you can still be at the executive table because they recognize that you have a unique contribution. Let's
Yeah.
just say you don't. Let's just say you're not sitting at that table. You're
Yeah.
sitting under that CRO. what are ways that you could then advocate for yourself? What are ways that you think could be beneficial to either make sure that the thoughts are heard at that executive table, or to perhaps have them say, like, oh, this is kind of unique. Like, maybe we need to have this train of thought in our conversation. Any thoughts on that? Like, and I know you're passionate for economics, as you and I were
Yeah.
chatting about earlier in this
Yeah.
call. So curious what you think are like ways or techniques to help to elevate that for an individual.
Yeah, and that's why I really advocate understanding your customer economics and your margins and your data and applying things that you can learn from product-led growth and from marketing in terms of how you look at conversions that lead towards your revenue events so that you have more accurate projections. All of these things not only gain you more trust from your fellow executives, and whether you have that seat at the executive table or not, you should be thinking of yourself as an executive. You should be behaving in that way, because when you step up in that way, then that's when they start to pay attention to you in that way. And um, and essentially, when you start to put together the data that is appropriate for the type of investor you have and the business stage that you have, then you're assured to be aligned with your business objectives and aligning what your team is doing and getting the results then, because what gets measured gets done. And if you're aligned with all of those things, then you're going to be able to start to speak to those results. And ultimately, look, I it's rare that a CRO who has only come up in sales can really translate that. And when you start to deliver that type of information, then what happens is the CRO the first couple of times will try to say, oh, this is what it is. And as soon as they ask a question, it's like, I don't know. I guess I'll just have to, get back. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. I need to ask Parul, and then eventually they're like, well, why isn't Parul here? We want to know now. We're at a board meeting, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Or
why
you get
don't
that
you know?
frantic Slack. You get the frantic Slack. Can you join this meeting right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
You know.
And it's like, no, I can't. You're gonna have to swim on your own or invite me in advance, kind of thing. Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
talking to a leader the other day and she's like, yeah, I'm on vacation next week. And they wanted to know if I could, call in for the board meeting where everybody else is going to be in person. And I was just like, no, it's
Yeah.
like, good for
Well,
you.
so
Absolutely.
that's
Say no.
so you just found something really incredible, which is also the ability to say no, right? And
Oh
I think
yeah.
we've all been in that position, right? Like, oh, the board is meeting here. Can you dial in for this 10-minute section? It's like, first of all, nothing gets done in 10 minutes. Let's be realistic. And then, like, if I'm going to talk about this value, like, why are we not in the room, right? But I love that you said the ability to say no, right? I think a lot of people, when we're coming up to and we're trying to gain that executive presence, you kind of become like a yes person. But maybe that's a little bit of the opposite. Is there a bit of executive thinking that is also like tempering expectations and actually saying, I'm not going to give you a bad product. I'm not going to show up on this call from the beach. I'm going to show up properly on this call. Yeah, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on like the art of saying no, because I think that's a whole
Wow.
nother.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, we got into this whole mess because we tried to be the everything department.
Yeah.
And, and being, and you think back to growth at any cost period, right? And during the growth at any cost period, we didn't finish building the product. We just rushed. We did MVPs in the name of sort of like lean startup mode, which is not what that really should have been, because MVP means it should still work. Do you know what I mean? Like, it needs to work for the customer. And there were fundamentals that they would just not build into, the features, and they wouldn't fully test it. It's like, oh, CS, you test it, that sort of stuff, right? And then they were on to building the next thing that would also be broken, and on top of the next thing that would also be broken. And so CSMs became gap fillers to the point where even reports, there wouldn't even be report portals, and customers would have to email you like, hey, can you give me a report that shows X, Y, and Z with this, that, and the other thing for this period, blah, blah, blah. Like they're giving you the whole parameter of what they need. So you go and you run the report, and they're like, oh no, actually what I also need is da, da, da. And you go back and forth via email to get a report, and so literally, like, there's things like that where you literally have to show the economics of it. You need to show the cost, because if you show the cost of how much you spend in human hours and time and money, right? And you're doing all of that, then you can say, or we could spend X. So we can spend 10X on a monthly basis, or we could spend X once. It's a better customer experience, and it's done, and it's less expensive for the company. And that's how you have to show up. Because if you don't show, like, this is our opportunity cost, it's like, oh, I don't know, we're just spending so much time on this. Well, too bad. I spend a bunch of time doing stuff I don't like either. Wah. Just stop complaining, start showing the impact on the business. Then they'll listen to you.
Totally. I mean, it's so simple. It seems so simple. And then like in those moments, I think we all just go back to like, we're people pleasers. I mean, I hate to say that, like we are kind of people pleasers, but
yeah,
we
love people. That's why we're in
we love people.
roles.
That's why we don't want to disappoint. It's not about it's not even people pleasers, like I think too negative. It's like not wanting to disappoint others. But then you do become, and Rohan posted in here, like customer support role, you become like sort of a reactive arm if you're not able to say like, I need to do this properly, I need to define the business value, then what you're doing is actually like reactive, right? In a way. So it's like, it's so interesting that you put it that way. So
yeah,
I guess what would you say is, let's take different levels, because I think we have people on this call maybe have different levels. Maybe we could just break it up to three sort of parts. Let's start with like a CSM level. How can a CSM in their day-to-day work like change sort of their behaviors or mindset to be a little bit more thinking like the executive team, or thinking like the executive sort of focus that we're talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly understand what type of investors you have and what objectives they have, what business stage you're at, what are the priorities of the business, and not just like, oh, we need to acquire more customers. That's, really simple. But, what does that mean? What are they trying to get done in terms of the numbers this quarter or next quarter, that sort of thing? Then otherwise I would say, you want to also understand the business economics of your customers and what those business objectives are. And, a lot of times the people that you're working with don't necessarily know that. There are ways you can get clues by, asking, what have you heard? What is your company looking, to try and do this quarter? What are, what are your KPIs? What do you hear about from your boss on their KPIs? That sort of thing. Sometimes that can get very functional, and it still doesn't quite help you understand the business objectives. But just trying to understand how they're using the product and to what end, to what means, and understanding the context of that, and how it fits into the rest of the company is helpful. So it's a lot of, investigative hat, to get to that. Eleni, do you have some thoughts on that too?
No, sorry, I came off mute by accident.
Oh, okay. I just thought you wanted to weigh in on that.
Yeah.
Sorry about
please
that.
do. Yeah, please do
Yeah.
if you want to.
Yeah. But no, and please, like, it's just because this is some fireside chat with me doesn't mean that everyone doesn't have experience and perspectives to add in. And that's how I am with Success Hour. Like, even when I started off where it was supposed to be an office hour for me, it always had leaders and other CSMs, and everybody has an experience and a contribution and a perspective, that contributes. So, I strongly believe that. But anyway, and so as a CSM though, it's really like what is happening in the marketplace, because as we start to understand like the key drivers that are the key like milestone events and outcomes or transformations and exit criteria of each stage and how that can build towards any of our revenue events, then we can also prioritize as CSMs, individual contributors, we can prioritize what our activities are that will have an impact, and understand the cost of, oh, they just want this little support thing and they're asking me, and so I'm just talking to them, so I'm just trying to get it done. It's like, no, there's a cost to the company if you keep doing that support work, because part of that is the support then doesn't truly understand the issues that are coming up, and they're not creating the tickets that will allow them to track the true issues, because you're actually absorbing a bunch of support tickets and not putting them into the system and not allowing for the whole process to happen. So there could be ways in which your whole company could be more efficient when you take on, oh, I'm just going to help them with that support thing because I want to be nice. You are costing the company money. You're not helping the customer, because what you should be helping the customer do is be more strategic in how they use your product to achieve their business goals. And that's why even when you're an individual contributor wearing those different hats, when you're doing onboarding and CS and support, you need to really wear those different hats. You need to have separate emails for it, where you can log and track those tickets for onboarding and for support, so you can analyze that later. And you need to help the customer understand that you're wearing these different hats, they're in these different phases, right? So that then later on, when you do build up the team and you have a different onboarding person and a different support person, it feels natural to them because they sent the support tickets to the support email, they sent the onboarding to the onboarding email, and then you give them a way too of tracking those things in a way that they don't rely on you, where they have to talk to you and say, where's that at? Because you give them a system where they can track those things and interact with it and have those portals. So
that's a great tip. I'm going to send this session because there's a woman I'm mentoring. Actually, she's going through a kind of a similar situation where they removed support like for her area, and they said, well, you can just fill the gap for now. But we've been talking about like techniques, but I think it's like, I said, well, first of all, like, how are you supposed to do your day job when you're sitting and doing reactionary tickets? Because that, obviously tickets kind of get you in like a trigger mode. But I think that the way you put it is really interesting. Like, there's actually a cost. This is actually costing you more money than if we did this the proper way, because I'm not actually helping the customer be proactive, right? I'm focused on this other. Yeah.
And even if you're wearing the different hats, you stay in reactive mode for support and even for onboarding if you don't have a ticketing process to support it, because then you don't have the ability to analyze the types of issues that are coming in, so that you can work with engineering to fix things, so that you can create bots to answer some problems, so that you can create educational materials or drip materials throughout the customer life cycle, so that they get the information as they need it. If you don't set yourself up to not have those tracking systems. If they're getting rid of the support team, say, okay, fine, keep the support ticketing system. I still need that, and things
and the tools and okay, so let me shift, because I want to keep time for people to chat, but I wanted to cover off on the two other roles. So let's say you're like a manager now, right? Manager level, managing a team of CSMs. What are things you could do to maybe level up your sort of day-to-day and have more of that executive presence, or even like elevate issues to your manager?
So again, it's about understanding the overall context. And when you are in that middle management, You want to certainly focus, on your team in a lot of ways, and the book of business that overall your team has, and how you coach them, and is really important, because that is the execution of the overall vision. But frankly, it's even that much more critical that you understand, again, the business objectives, and you figure out your economics and your margins for your for the individual accounts, and for the CSM books of business, as well as your overall. And that's something that we don't think about enough, is margins. And
I love margins. I love
yeah,
margins.
yeah.
I love that you say. Yeah.
You never. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that most CS leaders know what I mean by margins. And I literally just mean revenue minus cost is your margins. But most CS leaders are not looking at their costs. And then they're caught unaware and so surprised when their team is cut. And it's like, well, that's because you weren't managing your costs. You didn't understand that when the revenue went down and you are COGS, because unless you have people who are over in OpEx because they're generating revenue, your COGS, and if your revenue goes down, then COGS has to go down. It just does. Otherwise, you're not a profitable business. And we're in an era when you have to be a profitable business, either because you're not getting the investing, or because you're not, the investment funds, or you're not getting, or you have a longer runway that you're trying to get through, or just you're trying to get to the next funding session. And when you do that, you're needing to show the investors that you are profitable, or that you have a break-even point on profitability, and when you're going to hit.
That's
and
awesome.
And I was saying to Parul before we got on and let other folks in, that I talk about economics a lot, but anybody can learn it. And I have case in point. When I was in college, I got 2 C's. It was partly because I never really went to class, but that semester, it was just a thing. I didn't go to class that semester. I didn't. But I think I showed up twice or something, but economics though just didn't resonate with me, and so I got a C, in economics, and it's the kind of thing that doesn't. So what? So what? It doesn't matter what you ever got in class, or if you ever thought that you couldn't do it. There are ways to learn this stuff, and it's not like you've got to know all the economic formulas, and especially with ChatGPT today, you don't, you can ask anything and figure anything out. And then I'm also teaching courses and things like that. So like I can break it down and make it easy for you. That's what I'm committed to.
Well, that's fantastic, because I think everybody, if you're feeling uncertain, there are great ways to learn out there in a comfortable space, and also like with a CS lens, right, with what you're doing. So if anyone has any questions or wants to chime in, feel free to. I can keep going all day with questions, but I want to give you guys space too. Any questions?
It looks like people have some thoughts over in
the chat. We had some good, I think Divya had to leave. But she was definitely agreeing on automations, especially for support. I mean, yes, definitely. And then Rowan had some points on lack of internal roles and process definitions can also cause poor customer experience, and customer who doesn't know who to reach out for what, since the CSM is taking care of everything. And you know what? Rohan, you make a really good point, because I think also the CSM, that's the support agent, you almost diminish your value, because the customer thinks, oh, this is the person I need to go to with my issues, but not necessarily the person that's going to also be my, maybe my value driver, my business leader. So it is hard to play all the roles and wear all the hats. Anyone else have a chat?
And to add on to that, more often than not, the CSMs lack the time after running through all the tickets and all the support issues and everything else to have the mental capacity to actually think anything strategic. And while they're in meetings and discussing things that they need to do more strategically, on the ground, they end up actually doing things more support oriented and reactive. And so there's a clear mismatch in the role definition, in what they're expected to do, and it ends up to attrition as well, because as an individual you get frustrated because your things are not aligned. Your expectations and your deliverables are not really aligned.
Wait, so sorry, I was also reading Mina's in the chat. What was the last part about where it led up to alignment?
So with the customer success managers having to, run through these meetings with the leadership and with managers on expectations from their role and what they're supposed to do, not being aligned with their actual deliverables on the ground, when they're actually talking to customers. It also causes a frustration on an individual level where, you don't know how to showcase your metrics because you're not really doing that work.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, is that that's why it's so important to understand the broader picture, to understand how to connect it into and into the same language, right? And I think that it's too much to expect individual contributors to do this on their own if the CS leader isn't doing it. It's not that they can't. I've helped a lot of people, who who their direct manager is not thinking in this way, go ahead and think in these terms. But I think that the only way we get out of the hamster wheel is we have to stop doing the hamster wheel. We have to step outside of it and look at how the hamster wheel is turning, and then say, okay, how do I want to break this down? What do I want to do? As long as you're keeping that hamster wheel running and you're just running, you cannot do anything else. And this is where it really comes to stepping outside of, just saying yes and just doing everything and being in that reactive mode. You will continue to be reactive and doing everything until you step out and say, what do I need to be doing that will make an impact? And to know what you're doing makes an impact, you need to know how you're aligning. Does that make sense? I don't know if that resonates, Rohan.
Yeah.
100%, Jen.
Okay. Mina, what were you
Can I
saying in the chat here? You were saying that you don't have direct experience with budgeting.
That's right. And because I've been a consultant most of the time and within the customer experience space. So that has come in my way of moving to the next level of, a leadership role and stuff like that, because I can't speak strongly to that. I can, of course, understand and think, but, I can't show enough evidence. So I've struggled with how to bridge that gap.
I think it's really just learning more about it so that you can ask the right questions. And you can ask those questions when you're in networking meetings, in interviews, and that sort of thing. And if you have a sense of what you want to do with the information after asking those questions, then, that's really, everybody does it for the first time. It's more about, and a lot of people who do it for the first time, when they do it for the first time, they're not actually even prepared for it. And they're not even sure what they're doing, because no one trains them anyway, right? So the idea of once if you start to get some of those insights as to what's important, why, what do you do with it, how does that impact what you might, how you might execute or how you might develop a strategy, then you're still ahead of the game of most people who are doing it for the first time.
I chime in really quickly too, because there can be different kinds of budgets that you manage. So you might manage your CS team, your overhead and your margins, but you might also manage like your customer margins. And I found CS teams can be really successful if they understand the customer economics.
Yeah.
So you might not know like all the software, whatever, the CS team, everything, but you could speak to like, hey, the customer pays this. And then here's all the things that we do for them. And here's the customer economics. And you can strive for better margins and like make improvement in that area where you might not have like full visibility on all the internal budgets, or just as an example.
Well, but you can always talk to the CFO or VP of finance or whatever to get, you know, what do you call the overall budget here? What do you, when you're looking at our margins, what are you looking at? You know, and that sort of thing. But absolutely, you should know what the margins are of every account, because you want to then be able to slice and dice that. And that's the first recommendation I have, is to get your numbers of your revenue and your costs on an account basis, so that you can slice and dice it by top 10, bottom 10 segments, cohorts, you know, you name it, any way you want. Once you have it on the account level, then you can, you know, take a look at like, oh, who has these 2 products, you know, who has 2 products out of 5, you know, what are those economics? Who has 5 products out of 5? What are those economics? You know, all of that. Start to really take a look at who's profitable, who isn't, why is that? But it's only if you have the data on the account basis, and your CFO doesn't care about it on the account basis, really. They want to know in terms of collections, but otherwise they're just looking at top level numbers. It's up to the CS leader to really pull together the data on the account level, because that's the only way you can get to the bottom of understanding where your challenges are and what you need to fix, so where you have gaps and that sort of thing.
Profitable revenue, as you say, Jan, all the time. Like, I mean, I think then you really know, like, is your ARR like working for you, or are you, you know, overpaying for your ARR essentially?
I just put in the link. I have a free
Love
masterclass
it.
on the 17th, and also my CS Business Leadership Accelerator is starting up soon too.
Great. I'll put that in the YouTube notes too.
Okay. Cool.
Any other thoughts from anyone? Or, I mean, we can also talk to Jan about, you know, her CxChange. I think there's so much cool stuff that you're doing even outside of the work that we're talking about today. What other questions do people have? Okay, well, I'm gonna ask another one then, because you guys know me.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Give me food, give me space.
No,
I'll do it.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. I'm sorry. I wanted to actually follow up on Rohan's question, where he feels he's on this hamster roll and is not able to validate the metrics or speak to it. I think I would recommend actually speaking to your manager that you need to know the broader story of where this whole thing is going. I think understanding that and aligning what your deliverables are against it, why and why not, should always, it's actually beneficial for the organization too. They have to keep it transparent, and that conversation must also happen at the CSM level. Bring that awareness that you need to know what's happening at the top level. I have seen teams where they don't share that, or they exclude, and then it comes as a story, it comes as a news. And that's, sorry about the language, it's not right. That's not the way it should be done. We are all in this together, and everybody needs to know.
And another point on that is that what you're seeing too is people often think, well, I don't have the data, but in fact, you can create the data yourself. You can identify what are the key things that customers need to do in order to be set up successfully, in order to renew. And of your own book of business, did you do that? For which accounts? If you start to just track that, you'll have an idea of where the gaps are and where your opportunities are, who is optimized to purchase, who, whatever. And ideally, yeah, that should be something that should be set up across all of the accounts. But just because your CS leader hasn't seen the light doesn't mean that you can't act on it, because you can create your own data, and because the other thing that I do actually too is a career crafting community. And this is, where you're identifying what your target roles are, and how you want to develop, what your story is, and how you want to represent that on your resume versus your interviews versus networking, and what companies you're targeting and that sort of thing. And oftentimes people say in their resume, it's like, oh, well, I don't have the data, I don't have the numbers. Like, sure you do. Even if you're doing guesstimates, no one's looking over your shoulder on that. You can still make certain that it's representative. But also, while you're in the role, anybody can create it on Google Sheets. And these days you've got agent AI and things like that, where you can build agents and stuff to make it easier, or you can use, Zapiers, Zaps and stuff like that. There's ways in which you can make it easier. Usually there's, like, in different tools, you can, build your own view or reports as you need to. You can find ways of building your data in ways that are easier to track, or if you have to just do it on a Google Sheet. There's really nothing stopping you. Not once you identify that you want to make that impact.
Well, and speaking of executive presence, I think it's a great way to show up even if you've thought of something abstract and you wanted to say, hey, I put this down into sort of numbers just to visualize it. Your leadership may not have thought of it. They may not have had time to do it. You could be doing something really cool. So that could be a way to also elevate yourself in a space where, then it could get recognized, like, okay, let's fill this in with the correct numbers, right? With the exact numbers, since you've got this, like, sort of framework started. I love that.
Yeah, and even if it's just the data that is about, like, your own accounts and what you're doing that makes an impact on your accounts, you can measure that. That's something you have control over. Think about what you have control over versus what you don't. And you do have, control over things that you may think, like, oh, I can't do this. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can.
Mm-hmm.
And just any sort of small way. Now, Madhu, I'm really surprised you have not spoken up yet.
It's also just because I just came in and I'm just trying to figure it out. But, like,
I know, but you know me, and I'm always just going to ramble on and have my opinion.
no. Like, I genuinely love and attending all the like other sessions we have on a weekly basis.
Yeah. How's your kid?
She's doing good. I actually had a second one just now, so being super.
Ooh,
Congrats.
nice. I thought maybe I would see her in the background again.
She's in school right now. But yeah.
All right.
No, apologies. I was just, like, I wanted to start with this one right from the beginning, but I had another meeting, so I couldn't.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Well, we're just talking about things like customer economics and one thing I haven't actually talked about yet is just, like, the way that now we have yet another economic crisis on our hands, self-made. But with AI, like, that's what we're going to see is I don't know if anybody's heard the term yet, gigacorn, but it's no longer a unicorn. It's not a centaur. What you see now is there are companies who are trying to get to 1 billion in ARR with 100 to 200 employees, in that kind of range. And I think the dramatic shift that we're seeing here now that AI is on the scene and that people are expecting it to be, impacting, like, the whole company, is we're going to see all of the metrics shift where CS, where COGS was considered to be about 10% of revenue, and then of the other 90%, it was considered to be, like, 40% of that was going to be sales and marketing. And think about all the engineers and product managers and all of that, like, they were considered contributing to revenue and those big teams, and big paychecks. I think all of that is changing. You're already seeing engineers 30% more productive. That's a stat from last year.
Whoa.
you know?
That's
And
amazing.
and you think about Gen AI and the tools that they had to use, even just last year. And so like across the board, we're not going to see rule of 40. We're gonna, already they're thinking rule of 50. It'll, go 60, 70. We're also looking at revenue per employee as a big metric. And that's the metric you're going to be seeing. And so, whereas before companies and teams, the idea was that you were supposed to grow your company size and number of employees in order to grow the revenue, that assumption's out the window. That is, in fact, it's frowned upon. What are you doing hiring so many people? That means you're not building, systems and processes and taking advantage of AI. And so every single hire is scrutinized.
I can add to that one, and I completely agree, because even in my company, we've implemented the version of enterprise version of ChatGPT across the board, and I'm one of the people who is trying to make sure it's taken from the customer side of it, or like customer team side of it, in the aspect that we can. So we are already monitoring that, how much is it impacting like the usage and then the efficiency. And I know it's still in early stages to understand, but I could see, based on all the use cases and what people come up with, that it has gotten us to a lot better state in terms of, like the question before, in terms of economics, in terms of all the I would say the analysis that we do based on customer data and everything, in terms of like how everything is working. Like I'll give you an example. What I was doing the other day was trying to understand our segmentation across. So we have, like, say, close to 6,000 customers. So how do these customers, along with the segmentation with my team and across the board, works, and does it make sense, and do we need to relook into it? And to be able to do that with someone like a AI-based companion, to kind of re-ask those questions. Okay, does this make sense? How about I make this change, and how about I do that? So going back to your point, Jen, like this analysis to kind of put someone as a sounding board, and then keep on understanding from multiple facets of it, and then get that within a matter of, say, seconds. That's just like mind-blowing. It's just like so fascinating to be able to do that. So I can completely understand that I can see, at least from my perspective, my efficiency has changed significantly. I can do so much from communication, from ideation, from analysis, a lot faster and a lot better. So I'm pretty sure, it's just crazy.
And there was a great session in December of CxChange Success Hour. And now we have a number of different types of programs and stuff, but Success Hour is the one that I do. And we were doing it weekly still in December. And I think it was December 17th. And I'll put our website on here because you can check for it. But it was David Brady who was showing how basically, I think he went back and forth a little bit between ChatGPT and either Claude or Perplexity in the end, but he did most of the work through ChatGPT. And he took an economics paper that there was no chance he would ever understand, but he could tell from the title that it was the type of business model issue. It was a news vendor thing. It was a paper on how to deal with the news vendor issue, which is like, how do you make certain you have enough newspapers for the day that you don't know what's going to happen? Like, what's the news going to be like? Are people going to sell out or want the news or not? And it's at each individual newsstand, right? And that's a very hard mathematical problem to come up with. And someone had an academic approach that he wasn't going to be able to understand at all. He not only uploaded it, got the information, he had those theories then applied to his scenario. See, it was as sort of an agency SaaS situation that his company was doing. And he literally was able to apply it, build out a model that he then put into Google Sheets, used it for his team. They used it to 6x the revenue in it, and build out a whole process for their customers so that they could help their customers maximize how they were sort of selling in certain things. And it was a game changer for them. And literally right after that, there was another economic event in that company, which made the revenue that his team was doing, even that much more important. And it's literally those types of things that if you start to think about like how you can take on this financial responsibility and use things like ChatGPT and whatever to learn things that you weren't going to go and get a PhD in economics, right? And you can start to use these things and bridge these things in ways, in innovative ways that that our companies need. His team then started to make commissions off of this, and they were doing better. Like it was just, the customer was served better. It was like a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win. Forget just being a win-win. Anyway,
That's
I'll
an
share
awesome. Yeah, share that. Well, I was just going to say that's an awesome example, and thank you for sharing your example too, Mother, because I think we're still in this like spectrum of people that are like just dabbling and like hesitant, and then there are people that are doing these incredible game-changing things. And like, like anything, it's like just get started. And one of the things that for me was very eye-opening is I took some course, and it was like it was given to me. It was not a CS person. It was just like a regular somebody in the marketing ether that was like putting out a course on creating a GPT. And I just spent the time, sat in her course, because Divya has actually wrote about it for South Asian Success. And I told her she should do a course too. So Divya, if you're listening. But I took that course. And if I didn't take the like 45 minutes to do that course, I couldn't have gotten use of that GPT in the same way, right? But sometimes you just have to take these like baby steps, and it doesn't have to feel like this massive undertaking. But I love the example of taking something you don't understand that's complex and using, your AI to actually help you like distill it down. So that's something we all could relate to, because how many times have you read even like a New Yorker article and you're like, I need this in 30 words,
Well, with that, you can use Notebook LM, right? Google's Notebook LM will, and I don't want to hear it in their podcast voice. I don't need two people going blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, thanks.
I do listen to it sometimes. If I'm like taking a walk, I'll like listen to it, but it's long still,
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, all of that, just, translated over. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys.
And so the resources page, you can search on CS and AI, and you'll get things. And we had one last month that was about how people were building agents for their CS programs. We have one next week that is, I forgot to mention that, Parul. That's another thing I'm doing next week, is his Success Hour is doing a thing where we're just talking about Gamma and how to use Gamma. And then in June, we're going to be doing one on Agent AI, which is a no-code agent building solution.
Awesome. Okay, well, lots of things to stay in touch with for Jan. We're going to try to put all her links into the YouTube notes as well, so everyone can find everything.
To sign up for the events.
Yes, please add that.
That's here.
Thank you so much, Jan. This has been awesome. And I feel like we really took this, like it got a little richer than the original, like even topic, and diving in and hearing some of the experiences with AI. And thanks for everyone that was able to share. I think this platform is so fun because I think we just are learning a lot together, but we're also able to hear what people are working on in different and unique ways. So thank you guys for sharing. For everybody for my YouTube listeners, I'm just going to flash up our quick upcoming events for South Asian Success. We also are kind of busy the next couple of months. We've got Bhumika talking about her journey from CS employee to CS entrepreneur. So if anyone is interested in learning more about that journey, you can join us. It's April 24th. We have Miranda joining us to talk about her roots, defining like her professional outlook and growth. And if you follow Miranda, she's super prolific and talks really about her experiences a lot. So we're excited to dive in. We added this new networking chat. I put it in out of order, so sorry about that, but it's on May 7th. If you just want to come and meet other South Asian Success community members, we're just going to have an informal chat and just to get time to get to know, because we've had a lot of new faces this year, get time to know each other. And then our upcoming June session is on how revenue and CS come together. We have Asia May and we have Stephanie and they're going to be talking about how not only as like go-to-market leaders, they own CS and how they've really seen the transformation take place in their organization. So follow along. We've had a really fun year, and Jan, thank you again for being a part of it, because I will say, I was really very excited to get this one-on-one time with you, and hope everyone else is as well. But again, we'll put all the resources into the show notes, and so I hope everyone has a great rest of your week ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see everybody today.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Thanks all. Take care.
Prue,
Bye.
I have
Oh,
a
yeah.
quick question for you.
Of course. Sure.
I want to know what your custom GPT is.
Oh, so I wrote one to actually help me write my newsletter better, faster. I write a lot of things. I write in a lot of platforms, and sometimes I need like speed,
Yeah,
So I put my voice in, like I'm still training it. It's still getting there to write my business newsletter, so I can take it and then like kind of rework it to be my own. But it's getting there. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's getting there. So I just have to keep like nurturing it,
I'm always
fun.
wondering, like, what people do custom GPTs for. So
writing is a funny one, because I didn't really think I would use it for that purpose, but I often have an idea and I just kind of like spitball the idea and I throw it in and just see what comes of it, because I didn't have time to fully write that article. But it also becomes like my idea database and my bank for future build outs. So yeah, that's kind of been, and I'm not a big AI narrative poster, but I do sometimes use just regular chat GPT to like read a post or refine a post, sometimes if it's like, if it's going awry. Yeah.
Vikram, were you curious about that too, or did you step away from your desk? Maybe you stepped away.
Oh yeah, maybe you stepped away. Well.
Oh no, you're there.
No, I'm there. I was just listening. I thought everyone else is also there.
No, I know we were wrapped up, but Jan wanted to know. Anyways, I haven't actually said that. I haven't actually told anyone, because I built it in that class, and then I just keep like playing with it, on the side. But I'm thinking about doing another GPT because I write children's books, and it's hard to like switch lenses a lot and think of different audiences. And I even talked about that in a recent post. So I'm trying to also use ChatGPT to help me think about creative, like new ideas for building in social media and stuff like that. So just to see what's happening out there. It's been helpful.
You probably want to have a different GPT for the
totally different one. Yes. So that's where the training the GPT I found very cool, because then I have one that's like this, it's like been fed some of the CS voice, and then the children's book, it's mostly Instagram, and it's a totally different like audience. And so we're still refining that, right? Like how to really reach better audiences. So it's been fun to dabble. What I use it for? I'll be like, give me some ideas of what to post. Because a lot of it, I have to still create the content. I have to go do a video, or I have to go do something. But it gives me the idea to do the video versus, me coming up with that idea. Because I'm not, don't always have. Social media is tough. Instagram world is a little tough, to be honest. You have to hit the sauce. So yeah.
Yeah.
I have a movie reference I have a movie reference that I can give for the whether to use AI or not. So when I was so the Interstellar movie was re-released in India, so when I went to watch that once again, because I really love that movie. And when I was there, I just noticed back in when it was released, it was not a big deal. AI was not a big deal. AI was not even in the scene when it was released. But now when I watch it, and the main lead says when their spaceship blows up and it starts rotating, it starts spinning. The main lead says, measure the rotational speed of that spaceship. And then the robot which is there on his spaceship, it actually calculates the rotational speed of that exploded spaceship, which is rotating at a very fast rate. I feel that he could have done it, if as a human he could have sat and done that. But that he had bigger things to do at that time. They're just enter into a black hole and come out of a black hole, and he has to think of bigger things to do in his life at that time. And he uses AI there to solve the bigger problem faster. I think so. We should get inspired by that. And even today, I see some posts. Recently, I saw a post, a lady writing, "We have all given up everything to AI, and we should return back." I don't think so. That is ever possible. The cat is out of the bag, and we have to accept it, and we have to adopt it. And the sooner we adopt, we can, as others said, we can improve our productivity. The sooner we adopt, it's better. Those who deny will only lose the race, I think.
Oh, wow. That's a great, I have not seen that movie. That's a great reference. So thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen it, Jan? I haven't
Which
seen
one is
that.
this?
Interstellar, right? Is that what
Oh,
it's
yeah,
called?
yeah. Interstellar. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have
Yeah.
it. We record, it's one of my husband's favorite movies. He's seen it more times than I have, but it's 3 hours long. So it's a commitment.
Is
Yeah.
it the Matthew McConaughey? Sorry, I just need to know
Yeah,
that because I
yeah.
haven't
and it
seen
had
that
like
one.
the
Okay.
books that fly out
Yes.
at one scene, yeah. And which I just remember because it's like happening between space and Earth and whatever. But yeah, it's a great movie. And but whenever, like, 'cause we still have cable because we live in this development that has cable as part of it. And so it's like, all right, that's what we got. If we have internet, we have cable apparently. And so it was on. The movie was on and we recorded it and it's on our DVR. And one of these nights, actually pretty soon, Vikram, we will be watching it, but we have to plan ahead because we need 3 hours.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
Well, you can report back to us, Jan, if you
yeah,
that resonates that. Sorry,
No,
Vikram.
back when it was released about 10 or 15 years ago, it wasn't a big deal, and we never thought that AI would come so soon to our world. I know, like,
Yeah.
but now when I watch it in retrospective, it actually looks like, okay, he had a bigger thing to do. He had to deal with a black hole and other cosmic stuff there, and he needn't sit there and start measuring what is the rotational speed. We have to take help from this and move on and solve our bigger problems. That's the
I
thing.
love that. I mean, that's true, right? And that's like a great, like maybe it's not life or death and what we're doing in our jobs, but like if you can prioritize and use AI to help you solve something that might take you longer, something that's super complex that you could make go faster, that's like a great approach to think about it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
Thanks
Cool.
for sharing that, Vikram.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice
hopefully
to meet you,
this was
Vikram.
enjoyable,
Thank
Vikram. I'm
you.
glad. Hopefully took some things away. And thank you, Jan, again. This was fun. I loved it.
Thank
Yeah.
Have to do
you.
maybe make it an annual thing. We could
There we go.
I love that. I love that.
And then we'll figure out some way for you to, whatever, whether it's
Yeah, and we
change
should
or
have
something
our
else we do.
and we'll talk live sessions upcoming. So we have a lot of fun ahead.
Yeah, October. Vikram, where are
Yeah.
you based?
I'm from Bangalore, India.
Oh, okay. Well, if you find
Yeah.
yourself in New York in the end of
Definitely.
September, beginning of October.
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'll be
If
there.
it happens. I don't know that I'm going to get to India anytime soon, so no judgments if you can't make your way to New York.
Yeah. Thanks for the invitation.
All right.
Take care, all.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a
Thank
good
you. Bye,
day.
Parul. Thanks. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.